choosing online agendas. Now, Madam Secretary, what is our first item of business?
The first item of business is action on the minutes of the December 2023 special and regular meetings of the Milwaukee Board of School Directors.
If there are no corrections, the minute will be approved by consensus. Director Zomber.
Thank you, Chair Herndon. I think the committee, I could be wrong, but I think the committees are missing the board members who are present. It's on the regular, but not on the committees.
Madam,
Do you have like a example of a page number that you're?
Yeah. Sorry, let me go back to it. Page 522 for like SASE, or no, that's PACE, that none of the attendance is listed at the beginning of that committee. And I don't think it's on any of the other committees.
The attendance at individual committees isn't included in the proceedings? Are you talking about a vote that isn't showing up?
No, just the members present for those meetings. Don't we usually?
No, that's
we
not
don't normally
typically,
include in
not in
committees?
the minutes, in the proceedings, no. It would be in the committee's minutes, but not in the proceedings of the board.
Okay, thank you.
thank you. With that, we'll move right along. Madam Secretary, are there any reports or communications from the superintendent?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have one communication from the superintendent. That is the monthly report with possible action of the superintendent of schools. This is an informational item. Although it was noticed for possible action, no action is required.
Will the superintendent please present the report?
Good evening, President Herndon and members of the board. Keith Posley, Superintendent of Schools. This month's report highlights some of the exciting events that have taken place around the district. On Monday, January 15th of 2024, we recognize the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Our students participated in the 40th annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day celebration at the Marcus Performing Arts Center. This year's theme was what affects one affects all. Students from all around the district participated in the art, speech, and writing contests and were named top winners in each category. Additionally, we thank City Year and all the city volunteers for a day of service at Lloyd Barbie Montessori School. On Saturday, January 20th, our winter graduation took place at Green Tree Preparatory Academy. It was a joyful ceremony as graduates proudly walked the stage commemorating their accomplishments. We congratulate these graduates and applaud their families, friends, and loved ones, along with the dedicated MPS staff for supporting and inspiring our young people along this journey. We thank you all for making a difference in the lives of our students. Also on January 20th, Milwaukee Public Schools welcomed a 9th edition of the City Review, showcasing MPS student athletes and performance. It was a full day of city conference basketball at Marquette's University Al McGuire Center. Students played tirelessly for the chance at the win. It was great to see. If you missed this year's conference, you missed an amazing time. But don't worry, students will be back next year to show off their athletic talents as well. Our kindergarten enrollment fair, where families will have an opportunity to interact with the school leaders and staff, learn about the outstanding schools and program, takes place on Saturday, February 3rd of 2024 at South Division High School from 9 o'clock a.m. to 12 noon. While at the fair, parents will be able to enroll their children for the upcoming school year. And also, I'd like to set the treat for tonight. This evening, we're joined by the Superintendent Student Advisory Council. I have David Valdez, who's the coordinator for the SSAC, to share some highlights and introduce our members. And you will see they're all here with us and waiting and can't wait to be recognized. So, David, take it away.
Thank you, Dr. Posley. President Herndon, members of the board, my name is David Valdez. and I am the proud advisor to the Superintendent Student Advisory Council, or otherwise known as the SSAC. Tonight, students are here to share our mission, some of our accomplishments, and goals of the SSAC. After any questions, they will be returning upstairs to resume our monthly work session. Before introducing these three incredible ambassadors and SSAC officers, I would like to share a little bit more about this group. One of our goals is, and always has been, to have representation from each high school in the district. In 2019, when I began my journey as advisor of the SSAC, there were 19 members representing 8 different high schools. Last year in 2022-2023, the SSAC had 51 members from 14 different high schools. And this year, I'm so proud to state that the SSAC is represented by 79 students from 21 different high schools in our district. Each year, participation in the SSAC has grown, creating a diverse group of student leaders who advocate for the school community. Members of the SSAC play an instrumental part in providing student voice and input on topics that impact students and the district as a whole. Tonight, we would like to offer a synchronized presentation of our work. At this time, I'm very proud to introduce our president, Jonathan Dye, who is seated to the left of Dr. Posley. In the middle seat is Vice President Jeffrey Payne from Marshall High School. And soon to be seated in my chair, and will be left of Jeffrey, is one of our at-large members, Manuel Ishag. Thank you. Manuel, or Jonathan?
President Herndon, members of the board, my name is Jonathan Dye, and I proudly represent the Milwaukee School of Languages Hawks. I was elected as president of the Superintendent Student Advisory Council, and I am the founder and organizer of the Student Principal Advisory Council, or SPAC, at MSL, and also an honorary ambassador of Black and Latino Male Achievement. Jeffrey.
President Herndon, members of the board, it is a pleasure to meet you. My name is Jeffrey Payne. I am a student at Milwaukee Marshall, the Mighty Eagles. I am a proud trans student and one of the only openly gay students in MPS, and I also serve as a member of YES and LIT. Manuel.
President Herndon, members of the board, my name is Manuel Ishag. I'm an at-large member of the SSAC. I represent the generals from Rufus King High School. The SSAC consists of a diverse group of students. Our purpose is to engage with the superintendent, sharing with him our views and perspectives regarding everyday happenings at the district. Jonathan?
It is an honor to be selected as officers and ambassadors representing high schools across the district. Student voice plays an integral role as it provides us an opportunity to improve the high school experience for all students. As SSAC officers, we meet with Mr. Valdez before our monthly meetings to set the agendas and topics for each of those meetings. We'd like to begin with our 5 guiding anchors for the SSAC. The first is engaging in meaningful dialogue by sharing student views and perspective with school leaders, administration, as well as the school board. Creating an atmosphere where students are valued for their honest and focused feedback. Empowering our youth with the tools, knowledge, and experience needed to be successful leaders. Providing students with a sense of trust and belonging by challenging the culture at their respective schools. And sharing ideas to promote equity among all high schools in the district. Jeffrey.
We define our roles as members to include communication honestly, openly, and directly with the superintendent and other administrators, encourage student engagement throughout their school, quality education for every student, welcoming inclusivity, non-threatening school culture, work collaboration to help create a student culture of mutual respect, provide feedback for improving the high school experience for all students. Manuel?
I would like to quote research from the Quigley Institute for School Voice and Aspirations. Research indicates that students who believe they have a voice in school are 7 times more likely to be academically motivated than students who do not. According to this 239-school, 14-state study, student voice leads to increased likelihood that students will experience self-worth, engagement, and purpose in school. The more educators can give their students choice, control, challenge, and opportunities for collaboration, the greater their motivation and engagement will be. This can impact a student's level of effort and persistence, which are two of the most important factors which affect achievement. We appreciate the efforts of the district to provide outlets for students to express their perspectives through their voices. We would like to expand on those efforts by creating more opportunities that elevate the student voice at the district level. Students would like to ensure that their direct input is heard by board members, the superintendent, central office staff, principals, and other school-based staff. Students of the SSAC are encouraged to raise their voices in a way that leads to respectful, meaningful leadership while activating a powerful student voice. Providing students an opportunity to be heard takes a courageous culture shift, but it also provides an opportunity to give the students of MPS the tools and resources necessary to become successful leaders. Jonathan?
Last year, our SSAC president, Savion Jarvis, who is currently attending an HBCU and plans to venture into politics, said that in order for students to achieve academically, we must ensure that our school culture is inclusive and welcoming to all, so everyone feels a sense of belonging. That is how we can develop pride in our schools. We need to work on developing safer schools so that our students want to stay after school, participate in school sports and clubs. They want to meet and work with their friends in the classroom and the hallways. We need to focus on developing a better school culture and climate so that all students feel valued, safe, and relevant. Inspired by that mindset, the 2023 and 24 SSAC will continue to work on improving school climate and school culture. One of the highlights for the SSAC has been and continues to be our SSAC luncheons. Dr. Posley meets with students at their schools to have an informal conversation about how to improve culture and climate there. The SSAC members host the event and select 10 to 12 of their peers to join them. This small group format provides Dr. Posley an opportunity to learn more about the needs of each and every school in the district. This process provides students with a great opportunity to organize, manage, and demonstrate leadership skills. At these luncheons, Dr. Posley makes sure that all schools are working with their student council representatives so that students have a voice at their school. This then provides clear and direct communications from the student council to the SSAC, to Dr. Posley, and to the MPS school board. Jeffrey.
Topics we have discussed include an undefined communication model for all schools in the district, communication with student services regarding the SROs and the Assembly Bill 69, working with the Communication Department on a new project entitled Milwaukee Direct Admin, input on an undefined calendar for the district with input regarding IB and AP student schedules, culturally connected collective, and initiated started by Golda Meir students, cultural awareness at schools, and student wellness and well-being. Some of our goals for the 2023-2024 school year include equality among students, where we will be successful, how do we promote equality, engaging with the student disciplinary committees. I'm the president of one. How can we be more effective at communication with all schools and high school students in the district? Jonathan?
We'd like to leave you with this analogy based on the research that we presented earlier in this presentation. If a coach walks into the first meeting of a team in a new season with a list of his expectations and invokes the team's rules, then it's the coach's team. However, if a coach walks into the first meeting of a team in a new season and asks this team, what values do you want to see from your teammates and what rules should be in place, then it's the athlete's team. If a student has their voice heard and valued, they are more likely to be invested in all aspects of their education. Students will become more engaged when they realize that their voice matters. Jeffrey.
President Herndon, members of the board, on behalf of the SSSC, we would like to thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our presentation, and we are ready for any questions that you may have at this time.
Okay, I'll start on this side, if you will. Any questions over here? I'm sure Director Leonard does have a question.
So I've had a chance to work and see this take place over the last 3 years for myself. So first of all, Dr. Posley, I want to thank you for supporting this. I just want to make a comment first. This is the only superintendent and time that I've seen this happen at MPS. So we're definitely going in the right direction, but to see those numbers jump like that has just been exciting to me. It sort of tells me that our young people are ready to sort of help run this district, and we need their help with that. With that, though, I guess I'm just going to ask one question and let you answer that. What is the number one issue that you want to see addressed from your council?
President Herndon, members of the board, my name is Jonathan Dye, a student at Milwaukee School of Languages. And to address that question, I think the number one issue that all students can probably attest to comes in equity between all of the schools. Obviously, there are factors at play that might cause issues between them based on student number, based on taxes from that school's area or neighborhood. But we do see that certain schools do end up with more resources, more supplies, versus other schools in more, let's say, underprivileged districts of Milwaukee. Obviously, Milwaukee's a massive city, and naturally, you're gonna have different areas of higher wealth, lower income. Obviously, racial divides have been a large issue in our city. But what I haven't enjoyed seeing during my high school experience is that a lot of those disparities, whether it be through race, whether it be through gender, whether it be through the economy, are perpetuated by the schools in our districts. And while solving that issue is obviously very nuanced and it's not anywhere near as straightforward as any of us would like it to be, I think to see progress happen there, and we have seen a bit of progress happen, but to see more progress happen to where all students can feel as if it's inclusive, as if they're valued, regardless of where their school might lie, that'd be the number one thing I'd like to see from the district. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, Director Garcia. Oh, go ahead, please.
President Herndon, members of the board, personally, as a trans student, one of the biggest issues I feel that we have in our district is the lack of awareness of how to help and better educate people about transness and trans students. In my high school experience, I will not say it has not been pretty, as I'm trying to find myself and people are also trying to figure out what's different about me. It's just been a lack of knowledge on many, I want to say, the health teachers, in the sense that I wish there was like a better overall like sense of like health education with schools. That's always been one of the biggest issues that I feel like is a problem. Not just like basic like sex education, like more like inclusivity on body types, like different, like there's different ways to do it. There's different ways that you can be sexually engaged. There's different ways you can get help if you have a problem with your body. And I wish that was more like mainstream with school, because most of the stuff that I learned about being trans, I had to figure out on my own.
Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much. Thank you. Thumbs up, Jeffrey. Next.
Well, first of all, I want to congratulate all of the students that are here with us today, but really give a big shout out to the over 50 schools that are engaged. I think that stepping into leadership at the high school level is a very critical component of your leadership trajectory. So kudos to you all that have really stepped in into being involved in a network that is not only better connecting you to your school community, but to the communities across our district, which I think is really, really important. I know that it can become a very insular place where your high school becomes your bubble, but amplifying your experience through being able to connect and build relationships with the folks around you is going to be a skill set that you can take with your, once you get to college or, the workforce or whatever your next steps will be. So just be proud of the steps and the legacy that you are leaving behind. And my challenge to you all is to ensure that, you bring two people into what that can look like for your school so that you can continue to strengthen the voice within your, specific school building. So thank you to Mr. Valdez for, taking the time to pour into the youth. And really helping them and affirm them in the voice that they have. I know for us as school board directors, this is one of the most important voices for us to take into consideration. So thank you all for just continuing to utilize this as a way to, bring up the issues. I think, the question that I had was very similar to Director Leonard's in regards to the challenges that, there's 10 million things that we can be focusing on, but it's good to hear from you all that have been having conversations as to, the many issues that we could be addressing at the school level, at the district level. But I guess I'll shift my question more to maybe if you want to share one of your proudest moments of your involvement thus far.
President Herndon, members of the board, my name is Jonathan Dye, a student at Milwaukee School of Languages, and by far my proudest moments being a part of the SSAC came in my first year, which was last year, and getting the opportunity to organize one of the luncheons with Dr. Posley here at Milwaukee School of Languages. When Mr. Valdez came to me and let me know that this is something that we wanted to see happen and take place at our school, I was unaware of what that process would look like, how it would go, or even if we'd see any change. But through getting together a group of students at my school, organizing the luncheons, talking about issues we see in our schools, and having the luncheon ourselves, the fact that afterwards we saw progress being made, we could see that our voices were being heard, and even feeling a sense of belonging in the SSAC, but not only the SSAC, but also our school district, because to belong is to have a voice. And it was very powerful to see that there are people there listening, and that even though sometimes it may feel like we are isolated or as if we aren't being listened to, that it is possible to make progress. Thank you.
Jeffrey.
President Herndon, members of the board, I just wanted to say that when I was able to get a gender-neutral bathroom at our school with the SSCC's help, it was my first year there as well. I had got to talking, I was just a member at the time, and I was talking with Ms. Wade about actually getting one in place and how it would be better overall just to teach students about non-binariness, being outside of the gender spectrum. It will also open better have less uncomfortable conversations with me or other students at the school if you can just be like, hey, is a gender neutral bathroom one at a time? Just be respectful of other people. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
President Herndon, members of the board, my name is Manuel Hag. I go to Rufus King High School, and I think my favorite moment or series of moments is watching the SSAC grow, watching new high schools be represented, watching the district's efforts to include all high schools and all races and all genders in the student voice. And I've seen that personally. We had a luncheon at King, and we had many members be introduced to Mr. Valdez and the superintendent, and they're here today as members of the SSAC. So, yeah, that's it for me.
Thank you. Director Carr.
Thank you all so much for being here. It is incredibly exciting and an honor to be in the presence of you all. I was attending an education conference a couple months back, and I'll never forget one of the quotes that the keynote speaker said. He said, if you want to lose a fight, fight the future. And as I sit and I listen to you all and you talk about the challenges and your experiences in this space and the pride and where things have gone and where you want them to be, I just think about you all and the power of your presence. And I just want to tell you all to stay involved, continue to show up, continue to engage in the discussions, and hold us accountable, but keep up the great work.
Thank you. Director Jackson.
Yes, just a statement. First off, I would like to say to each and every one of you that I'm proud of you. I think people don't understand just them few little words mean so much. And knowing the challenges that y'all face today that I didn't have to face 20 years ago in high school. So staying focused on your path. Don't worry about pleasing everybody. It's impossible. But stay true to you. Even when you mess up, give yourself grace. Give yourself grace. You're a human being. But nonetheless, keep moving forward. I'm proud of you. Like I said, this is tremendous. This is a sight to see. This is something that we should see daily on the news, opposed to the other things that we see. So understand, you matter, and we do see you.
Thank you. Director Gokul Gandhi.
Hi, everybody. So nice to see you here today. I just think you're going to look back and feel so proud of yourselves, too, and also value so many of the connections that you make in this group as you carry yourself into the future to do great things. So, the opportunity that you've taken to get to know students across the city is such a unique one, and it's not afforded to a lot of districts or children in districts. And so I think that's really what makes this MPS proud and is so unique. So really pat yourself on the back for doing that. And my question to you three, or one or all, is if you were to come back in 5 years, what would you hope would look different?
President Herndon, members of the board, my name is Jonathan Dye, and I'm a student at Milwaukee School of Languages. To address that question, it's difficult because 5 years in the future is something that everyone my age can relate to. It's difficult to know what that'll look like, not only for ourselves, but also the world around us. And more so than ever before because of the crazy world we live in. I won't put it too lightly. If I could come back in 5 years, I'd like to see one thing stay the same, that we still have committed students who have the drive and the passion to go out there and to make change. In terms of differences I'd like to see that voices from those students who do have that drive and passion to make change, are being heard, and that everyone in the district feels like we have a voice, we have a say, and that us, the students who are experiencing going to Milwaukee Public Schools every single day to get our education, which is supposed to be foundational for how we'll grow up, how we'll perform in our careers, that everyone who exists in that environment will know that they do have a voice and that they do matter. Thank you.
President Herndon, members of the board, my name is Jeffrey Payne. I'm a student at Milwaukee Marshall, and I just wanted to agree with how crazy the world is. It's hard to know how things will be in 5 years from now. But personally, if I ever were to come back, one thing I would really want to see is committed students. I want to see somebody who probably sat right there or is going to sit right here, like talking to you all again, like trying to make things better or still trying to push for the change that we said right here early on. Because I won't be able to see it. I probably got like maybe 1, maybe 2 more good years in me. I ain't going to lie. But I just hope to see committed students and more students who are actually there for their schools, not just to get in, get out.
President Herndon, members of the board, in 5 years, 5 years ago, I can't even fathom living in the same world I lived in 5 years ago. But I think the district is going in a very good direction. What we saw during COVID was flexibility, and we as a district, we remade our structures, our school structures. We shifted to virtual. It was not easy, but we did it. And I think what that shows is resilience in the district. And I think I want to see that resilience. I want to see the district move with the world and not stay in the past. I want to see a district that's 5 years better than it was today, in terms of student voice, in terms of architecture, buildings. Thank you.
I just want to commend you because I think you handled that question so much better than I would have. Because honestly, when I was just having a conversation earlier today, and I was like, whomst among us has not used Zoom at this point? My father is 85 years old, and he has used Zoom. And if you think 5 years ago, like, to think about the changes that we all individually and culturally and as organizations have gone through, yeah, it's really hard to say, like, in the next 5 years what we would like to see, because obviously the whole world can just pivot, everything can change. I would love to hear more about, I would love to get a copy of the 5 anchors that you went over. So if you would be willing to share that with us, I think that would be great. And I would just love to hear more about the development of those anchors. If that's something that you collectively, with that many voices, how you were able to distill that into 5 anchors. And if there's a process like next year's, leadership says, hey, let's start fresh, or if these are going to be the 5 anchors from now until the next 5 years, I guess.
President Herndon, members of the board, my name is Jonathan Dye, and I'm a student at Milwaukee School of Languages. When it comes to the 5 anchors for the SSAC, they all come from its very idea, what the SSAC was founded upon. The first one, for example, engaging in meaningful dialogue by sharing students' views and perspectives with school leaders, administration, and the school board. That's exactly what we're doing right now. That's what is a big part of what the group was founded on, and the entire idea of it, because we saw that student voice wasn't being as recognized that maybe it should have been, and this group was created to remedy that. And the rest of the 5 pillars all exist in a similar vein, to reflect the same things that exist within every single member of the SSAC. And when it comes to the future, one thing that I can say that doesn't only apply to these 5 pillars or the SSAC, but also to life in general, is you can't be afraid to adapt to new things. A great example of this was during COVID 2020, we all had to adapt quickly because we had no other choice. We went to virtual schools, we had to get used to this new life of isolation. It was also difficult for teachers having to teach with 0 engagement. We had to adapt. And these pillars are willing to do the exact same thing. As was previously mentioned, we don't know what the future looks like in the next 5 years. There could be something totally different or an entirely new challenge that faces the next group of SSAC students, and there's no reason that these pillars 5 years from now can't reflect that. And also, thank you for the comments previously. We appreciate it.
President Herndon, members of the board, I just wanted to add on to what Jonathan said. I feel like the 5 anchors that we have currently are just the core elements of the SSSC, and that doesn't mean that they can't change. I hope that they only evolve with the newest members come forth, and if they add like a 6th anchor or maybe switch up or get rid of them entirely or just switch up to their own, I personally would be perfectly okay with that. That means they're changing. That means they're actually going along with what fits their needs. It's not the same problems anymore. It's something, it may be a new problem, but at least they found a solution for something that would have haunted me, And my second thing was, the second one, creating an atmosphere where students are valued for their honest opinions and focused feedback. That was one of the rules that made me stay with the SSSC, because it was so weird to be in a room where students were actually sharing what actually was a problem, and actually getting responses like, hey, this is what worked for us, or like, this might be different for us, but it might help you guys, or like, you guys can implement this. I like it,
I think our pillars, the 5 pillars we have right now, they're very solid, but I think it is the purpose of the SSAC and our pillars to evolve with the opinions and ideas of the student body. And I think change starts small and it snowballs. And what I like about the SSAC is little changes we suggest to Mr. Valdez, he takes into consideration, and if a change needs to happen, it does happen. For example, I emailed him and I said some students need transportation to central offices but not home. And next month when the meeting came, the questions were separated. It said, do you need transportation home, and do you need transportation to central offices? So I think little examples like that point to how the SSAC and our pillars can evolve. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Herndon. So just first of all, thank you everybody for being here. Thank you, Mr. Valdez and Superintendent, for having this very important group come before us, and the work that you all are doing. I mean, we are all the adults in this room are just beaming with pride. I don't know if you can tell that, but like, we are just, as a group, so impressed with you, with the work that you're doing. And I know I can speak for all of us, just saying how important student voice is to this district, to the board, and just encourage you to keep carrying that idea of how important your voice is, and how how much it matters as you move forward in your lives, because there's always a way to make your voice heard. And, life changes and adulthood comes, and I don't ever want you to lose that sense of feeling empowered to take action and to be involved. So just please stick with that, because it's important, and you've experienced what that feels like now, so carry that with you. I don't have a question, just a challenge maybe. Director Leonard and I run a group that we're building to bring your voices directly to the ears of the school board. So if you are interested in joining that group, reach out to Mr. Valdez and he will help set that up with you. But thank you so much for your involvement.
Thank you, Chair Herndon. So I just echo what my colleagues have said. I think I see a lot of future City of Milwaukee leaders in the audience and on the stage. So I can't wait to see what you all do in the next few years. I do have a question. So I think probably all of you have kind of heard about the MPS budget and a lot of the difficulties that we're having. Budgets are starting to roll out to schools, and there's some pretty scary cuts in them. So my question is, what would you like to see the board prioritize in the budget?
President Herndon, members of the board, that is a very difficult question to answer. And during my time at Milwaukee School of Languages, I became the founder of our school's group called the Student Principal Advisory Council, which acts in a similar vein to the SSAC, but with our principal, Dr. Baez, and we work to improve our school, Milwaukee School of Languages in our case. And one of the things that Dr. Baez was able to impress upon us were the various elements that go into school budget, as well as the issues or the concerns that we may face going forward. And one of those was the cuts that obviously do impact our district, and we do see it. We feel it as students, we feel it as staff, we feel it as an entire district. If I could see one thing being prioritized, I'd say it goes down to the students once again. And I don't want to make it seem like I'm beating a dead horse here. But when it comes to student voice, even within a school, you hear things being talked about even in passing or in conversations, such as supplies, such as lesson plans from teachers, such as space in a school, maybe lack of resources within a school. And having those concerns having more of a presence in the budget, even with those cuts happening, even having them being given more priority, would be something that I would love to see more of from the district. Hearing about the different elements of the school budget, how it works, how it's set for each school, I find that it obviously isn't easy. It's a job that no one necessarily wants to undertake, but difficult decisions do have to be made. But unfortunately, it does seem like at times those decisions come at the expense of the students. And that's not to say they are directly acting against them or to act against them, but as Manuel said, everything has a snowball effect. So when certain decisions are being made, whether it be cutting a teacher or cutting certain programming, is something that I've seen in my school, that's going to affect the students, whether it be mentally, physically, or even in their education performance. Thank you.
President Herndon and members of the board, I just wanted to say I don't think I can really put a classified number of what I would personally feel like needs to be prioritized. I feel like there's a lot that we already don't have, and already being like, hey, we should make sure we keep this one thing, even though it's half of a thing, is still not the way to go, in my opinion. I just think overall, things that need to be prioritized still aren't getting prioritized. They're still getting taken from, or like there's still like a lack of things in like art or music or like extracurriculars like AP classes. I think those things are still very lacking. So to be asked if we should prioritize just one of those things, I feel very conflicted about my answer.
Similarly to my fellow leaders of the SSAC, I wouldn't say I have one thing specifically to be prioritized, but what I think I would ask is fine arts, which is music and physical arts, are often the first thing to go when budget cuts are mentioned. And those two things are very important because they're an outlet for students. And I'm personally in the orchestra at Rufus King High School, and I'm a musician. And I think that helps students deal with stress, and it's something students want to engage in. So I'd say keep that in mind, please, when making decisions with regard to fine arts. Thank you.
I am so impressed with everyone. The fact that you're devoting so much time to this and you're really involved, you're really engaged. And it also makes this board, I'm sure I speak for everyone, when I say how much this board has invested our time and our effort, administration, their time and their effort in trying to get those art programs back into those schools. So that is very much high on our list. It was higher on our list when we got the first referendum passed. I am a graduate of Milwaukee Public Schools, what is now known as the School of the Arts. So I know exactly how you feel when you go into a school and it's lacking art, music, FIED, and marching bands was one of the things my children missed. We shouldn't have to do that. And we as a board speak so often about the defunding that the state of Wisconsin purposely inflicts. It was specifically MPS, now so all public schools within the state. And you can be assured that our board is very much committed to providing each and everything that you need in your schools, and we are only a phone call away to see if we can move a penny over here and a dollar over there to make sure that each and every one of you get everything that you need. I experience having everything in my school that I needed, and that's why I have been such an advocate of fighting for the survival of public education that landed me in a seat that I never looked for. But when we speak of 5 years from now, what could happen that you never thought about or dreamed of, that is one of the things. So I'm going to get off my soapbox now, but another thing that I found out when I got on the board, and I'd like to share that, Jeffrey, I think you were one of the people that brought it to our attention, was the food. And I think many of us were totally clueless that some of the kitchens had been removed. And we board members went and had lunch. And I personally started going to every one of my schools and saying, where's your kitchen? Show me your kitchen. Some had a kitchen and some didn't. But I can say for sure that with the money between the money that we got with the first referendum and then the ESSER funds during COVID, there are new kitchens in this district that didn't exist when many of us got on this board. And that work is continuing. It is continuing. So you've got a committed group of people here, and that includes all of administration. And we hear you, we see you, and we're so proud to have you here tonight. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Let's stand and give them a hand. Excuse me.
Madam Chair, members, I'm going to I think if Ms. Williams could, or perhaps the superintendent would like to make some comments, so we don't have dead air, we need.
President Herndon and members of the board, I just want to say that we are just so excited for our young people and all that they bring to the table. And you notice, not one time did they say anything about school nutrition. And so we have been working on that fiercely. And I am grateful that that is improving and we are moving forward when it comes to that. So that is something that is really moving forward. We will also make sure that the board receives the anchors that they talked about tonight, the pillars. We will make sure that you get copies of that. That is truly something that is fluid because we allow each group to make to come up with their own guiding principles. However, one of the goals is to try to bring some of the former members back from the previous year so that we're not starting all over again. And it's so exciting to see that one of them just got he got quotes all over now, and he's off at North Carolina Central, Savion. And so each year, the SSAC leaves the other group that's coming behind something to start work on, and we're just excited about the work that they're going forward. And as you notice as well, they talked about the idea of having meetings with the principal, talking about the budget. That's one of the charges that we have to get started in their school, meeting with their school principals, meeting with the teachers at that particular school, and coming up with a school governance council at their school so that they can influence and talk about some of the things that they need to happen within their school. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Madam Secretary, are there any reports or communications from the Board Clerk Chief Officer, Office of Board Governance?
Madam Chair, we have two communications. The first communication is action on a request to retire to closed session to confer with legal counsel relative to litigation in which the board is or is likely to become involved.
This item will be deferred to the end of the meeting. Madam Secretary, what is the next communication from the Office of Board Governance?
The next communication is the monthly report with possible action on legislative matters or related issues concerning Milwaukee Public Schools. This is an informational item, and although it has been noticed for possible action, no action is required.
Does the Office of Board Governance wish to make any comments?
Madam Chair, Mr. Thiel is here to give that report.
Thank you. Mr. Thiel.
President Herndon, members of the board, Chris Thiel, Office of Governmental Relations. And just a quick update where we are in the legislative session and a couple of the main topics as actually the session comes to an end. We've noted, and obviously there's been a lot of attention paid to the redrawing of the legislative districts. This week we saw some action within the legislature voting on and amending the governor's recommended maps. We've seen some feedback from the governor that had he wanted those amendments to his maps, he would have provided them in the first place. And so as this has arrived at the Wisconsin State Supreme Court for a decision to be made, we're really in the middle of that process where they have hired some experts who do this work. They are reviewing the maps that have been provided. And there are some certain deadlines in terms of the upcoming elections that they're trying to attend to so that by perhaps March 15th, we may have an understanding of if the maps are going to change, how exactly will they change, and what will that mean for policymaking going forward. So it's been interesting to observe. We've already seen kind of a shift in tone in some conversations. But obviously, as we mention each month, we are in a situation as a state where we have a historic surplus of over $6 billion. And as this board has taken action to place a referendum before the community, in April, when we discussed the prospect of doing that, we were talking about the fact that we were hearing that other school districts across the state were also going to be in our same situation. And as the filing deadline has now passed, we're seeing, I believe it is 84 school districts of the 421 across the state of Wisconsin so far this spring, February and April, are going to referendum of some type, either a non-recurring, recurring, or to issue debt. Last week, I think many of us were at the convention for the Wisconsin Association of School Boards, and just because of the publishing timelines that we have, I can place them in our report next month. But Baird, who we are working with to make sure that our numbers are in good order as they are, presented at a couple of sessions and described the number of school districts that are going to go to referendum and what that process looks like. And then the Wisconsin Association of School Business Officials has also been doing a very good job tracking, trying to update people and really have them understand why we are in the situation we are in as a state of Wisconsin, and why it is the fact that school districts, well before ours, have gone to referendum once, twice, 3 times or more. And again, we can place that report before the board. But there's just, in terms of getting some feedback from school business officials across the state, WASBO, Wisconsin Association of School Business Officials, is hearing well over 100 districts by the time we get through this year may be going to referendum. Perhaps over 130 is kind of the question I think they asked is, are you going to referendum or considering it? And I think they were specific to an operational referendum to help run their districts. So we're still waiting to see that play out. There are a couple of other dates on the calendar. We're hearing a number of districts are going to likely go in November for referendum as well. And the stories they're telling are very much the same as the stories that we've been hearing here in terms of the progress that was just described by the board and by our student representatives, the fact that we do have music back in our schools, we do have art back up on the walls, we do have kids accessing gym and books in the library and the things that all students should have, and making sure that we preserve those things for our students is the intent of this referendum, and doing so in a fiscally responsible manner. So along with those pieces, which again we can provide in next month, you can access them on the Wisconsin Association of School Business Officials, I believe, has that, or if you would like to go to the Wisconsin Association of School Boards website, the convention website also has those if you would like those sooner. But there was an article published this morning in the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. And I think, I'm not sure when we'll see that in the hard copy, but if people would like to gain a better understanding, and I know we've been talking about it month to month here, but certainly as these referendum have been coming into play, people are maybe tuning in a way where they haven't before, asking questions, wondering why the state funding is the way that it is. And frankly, I thought the reporting in the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel article that's out today does a fine job of describing, mentions certainly the effort that we're bringing forward, but districts across the state and the situation that they are in. And I would commend the president of the Wisconsin Association of School Boards, Dan Rossmiller, who just said it very plainly that the state is not keeping its promise to our students. And so if people would like kind of some additional information to just help them place what's going on in context, I would recommend that article to people, and again, I will share those additional pieces. Happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you very much. Are there committee members that wish to make comments or ask questions? Director O'Halloran.
Thank you. I don't really have a question. I just want to second the recommendation that for people who are wondering about referendum in general, or are specifically like why we're asking voters to consider this again, I think that article is really I think it lays out the situation quite clearly. And just anecdotally speaking with someone from the convention last week, you know, I have heard, well, why are you going again? Like, didn't you just ask for a referendum? And when I said that to another member from a district up north in the northwest corner of the state, he's like, oh, we go every 3 years. And I don't think that, you know, I don't think that that's how we should fund education in this state. Unfortunately, when the state, you know, the legislature made the decision that they no longer thought it was important to tie school funding to inflation, and they leave it up to the voters to, you know, fill that gap. That's how that's how districts are balancing the books at this point. But it was just really eye-opening, like just the casual way. I was like, we're talking about it in Milwaukee and it's kind of stressful. And, I'm just like, just getting his information, and the way he was like, yeah, we do it every 3 years. It's a conversation that we have to have. And I mean, that was eye-opening for me. So I would just highly recommend that article. And also Nina, I don't know, Nina is referenced in there, and they passed a referendum in 2020 and in 2022. The 2020, I think, was 114 million, and the one in 2022 was 122 million or 29 million. And that was just eye-opening to me as well, that the numbers that, voters are considering and passing, Nina passed both of those. It's pretty eye-opening the way that the legislature has really dropped the ball on education funding in this state.
Thank you. Director Leonard.
So, Mr. Thiel, you can correct me on some of my numbers here, but at one of the Baird presentations, 121 public school districts have a 10% or more cut in revenue. So when they gave that number, 10%, I mean, ours is higher than that. Our percentage is, I believe, higher than that, but 10% in a corporation would be layoffs that Friday coming up. I mean, that's your profit ratio times 3 at least. So that would not be anything that I would disregard. And I think that for the listening public, I have to mirror what Director O'Halloran said. There's a reason why we're all doing this. It's not because we like to do referendums. I know I don't. Going door to door and asking taxpayers for money is never a fun job to do. So you need to be prepared when you go out there and do it. But the reality is there's no other way for us to survive at this point in time. And there was one other, on that article, yeah, that was a very well-written article. They had those 4 factors. I'm just going to mention the 4 factors. So they talked about legislative action over the course of close to 20 years. They mentioned that. Inflationary factors, they did not go into the numbers, but I think they have a site for that. I didn't look at that yet. Decline in enrollment, obviously, is a big one. And then the ESSER funding that is going to end, and they mentioned the fact that a lot of school districts use that ESSER funding as a buffer. So to the credit to the Journal-Sentinel, they did a good job with the article. I thought it was very well represented and rather eye-opening. And there's a lot of readership, so that should be substantially helpful to us. Thank you.
Director Simpson.
So since we're talking about the referendum and what's ahead for us, I did speak with a teacher friend of mine yesterday, and these conversations are happening right now at the school level because they are in the planning stages for their budgets. And she was just sharing that at their school they're talking about losing their social worker, who right now is full-time, and she would be half-time next year, and reducing the gym teacher, who right now is full-time and next year would be half-time. And just and then like today she said the tone in the school was just so somber, just the devastating effect that has on the school community when we have to start making these cuts. And as much as the district tries to keep our schools whole, which I know has been a priority, at some point when the budget is so tight and we have to make the drastic cuts that are looming, the reality is that it comes down to the school level and some really difficult decisions that the school community has to face, and the direct hit it takes on our students, which they so eloquently talked about this evening. So it's really critically important that people are informed and really understand how we got here, why it's important, but also what the reality is if we don't get additional funding.
Thank you. Mr. Thiel.
President Herndon, Director Simpson, if I could just comment on that. I think one of the difficulties, as we know, is that we've been talking about some of this information. We've advocated, this board has advocated, we've joined forces with our partners across the state to advocate. I think it's mentioned in the article, to ask for the dollars that were needed, because we have been informing the state of the reality of what school districts have been facing. The superintendent, I don't know how many meetings Dr. Posley has been in and articulating what's really going on, and to echo the words of the students, focusing on bringing the resources to students. And so we've done that work, and I think we'll continue to do that work. But a couple of things that also have come up is the timeline. And as I mentioned, we're at the end of the legislative session. The state has not taken action to fund students, and it will not. And so we are in a moment here with our fellow school districts across the state of making that decision of asking constituents to consider the referendum, because we are in a moment where this is the opportunity that we can proceed with, and if it is affirmed, that to hopefully give some people a little bit of hope if they consider the facts as we can share them, and we have a successful referendum, then we are in a place where we're maintaining those programs for students and having a different conversation. And I think there's also been some confusion about the fiscal impact. The design of this, as we've worked with Baird, is to be very strategic about limiting the local property tax impact and bringing as much state aid into our district in years 2, 3, and 4 of this process. So there is this initial, as we've described it, $216 increase on a $100,000 home, which generates a process through a state aid formula where in years 2, 3, and 4, we're getting our revenue to the place it should be already. And I thought it was really interesting to hear the student describe not cutting the less than enough we already have. Because I think to that point, as we've talked about, had we simply kept pace with inflation over the last 16 years, our students would have access to $210 million more. That's just keeping pace with inflation, let alone the 60% for students with disabilities, that if we had had that, as the governor proposed in his budget, that would be an additional $55 million. And just to put that in perspective again, as we talk about these other policies, because we have different types of schools in our environment, right now, private schools through the Special Needs Scholarship Program essentially get 100% funding, right? There are 7 students who fall into this 90% range. But if public schools were 100% funded in terms of supporting our students with disabilities, which is a constitutional obligation of the state of Wisconsin. Right now, public schools are funded at 31.5%. But if MPS was funded at 100%, we would have about $125 million of resources today to make sure we're supporting all students, including students with disabilities. So I know some of these facts are things that we've talked about in the past. I think there's new attention and new questions, so thank you for your allowing me to state some of these figures again today. But as you know, that's the reason these referendum, not only MPS, but districts across the state, are being put in place and designed the way they are. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there board members that wish to make comments? Director Zomber.
Thank you, Chair Herndon. So when I went to WASB, or the delegate convention, I spoke with a veteran board member from a very small county. He told me that there's more cows than people. They only have 2,000 students in their entire district, and they're going to a $2 million referendum for the first time ever. And it's a district that probably elects every year people that, are not putting money in our schools. So I think that was just really eye-opening. I did not talk to a board member that was not considering going in spring or fall. So it was definitely, people were, pretty stressed being on a school board right now, trying to figure out how to come up with the money to support our students. So we're not alone in these discussions, and something's going to have to change. Thank you for the update.
Director O'Halloran.
And I just want to piggyback on that statement. How unfair is it that we are the ones that are stressed? None of this falls. It doesn't seem to fall at all. Like, it just rolls right off the back of the people who actually have the power to make this change, right? I've had constituents call me and they say, well, why don't we have air conditioning? Why don't we have more music? And I have to explain to them, well, we haven't kept pace with inflation and blah, blah, blah. And like the anger is directed at me as if I were the one that were chronically underfunding and failing our children. And it, it's good to know, I guess, to have that, perspective that it's not something that we alone are experiencing, but it would be nice if the people who actually had the power, who have these, the largest pile of revenue that we've ever had in this state, if they would also feel some of that pain and speak with our constituents who are asking for really reasonable things, to be clear, like asking for more, funding for music education in their middle school if they have a large K-8. That's like really reasonable. I'm not saying that that's not reasonable. So it's just very frustrating, and I will stop with my soapbox now.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. With that, Madam Secretary, are there any reports or communications from the Office of Accountability and Efficiency?
Madam Chair, there's one communication. That is the monthly report with possible action on activities within the Office of Accountability and Efficiency. This is an informational item, and although it has been noticed for possible action, no action is required.
Would the Office of Accountability and Efficiency please present the report?
Thank you, Chair Herndon. Matt Chasen, Office of Accountability and Efficiency. That report is before you. I'll just briefly highlight the collaboration that was with the administration this month to bring forward the 5-year forecast that you saw earlier this week. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Do board members have any questions or comments on this item? Seeing none, we'll move right ahead. Thank you. Madam Secretary, what is the next item of business?
The next item is action on reports of the independent hearing officers of the Milwaukee Board of School Directors, student expulsions.
The chair will entertain a motion to accept, modify, or reject the reports of the independent hearing officers of the dates and times listed in our agenda. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Madam Chair, someone needs to make a motion.
Director O'Halloran?
I move we accept the reports from the independent hearing officers as attached.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. Will the secretary please call the roll?
On Director O'Halloran's motion to accept the reports of the independent hearing officers, Director Carr.
Aye.
Director Garcia.
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi.
Aye.
Director Jackson.
Aye.
Director Leonard.
Aye.
Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Director Seamson.
Aye.
Director Zombor.
Aye.
And President Herndon.
Aye.
That's 9 ayes. The motion passes.
We will now have the reports of the standing committees. Since public hearing was given at the committee meetings, the board, as is customary, will not be given public hearing on these reports this evening. Madam Secretary, what is the first report?
The first report is that of the Committee on Accountability, Finance, and Personnel. 2 items of this report have been set aside. Item 2, action on the recommended administrative appointments, promotions, reassignments, and reclassifications, salary increases and decreases, and limited-term employment contracts exceeding 60 days, has been set aside at the request of the administration. The administration has also requested that item 6, action on monthly facilities matters, FMS award of construction, professional services contracts, equipment purchases, and contract modification recommendation, has also been set aside.
Okay. Do any board members wish to, any items to be set aside other than those put forth by Madam Secretary? Okay. Madam Secretary, what is the next report?
The next report is that of the Committee on Parent and Community Engagement. No items of this report have been set aside.
Do any board members wish any items to be set aside? Madam Secretary, what is the next report?
The next report is that of the Committee on Student Achievement and School Innovation. No items of this report have been set aside.
Do any board members wish any items to be set aside? Madam Secretary, what is the next report?
The next report is that of the Committee on Legislation, Rules, and Policies. No items of this report have been set aside.
Do any board members wish any items to be set aside? Continuing on, Madam Secretary, what is the next report?
The next report is that of the Committee on Strategic Planning and Budget. Item 6, action on Resolution 2324R-10 by Director Gokul Gandhi on audit reorganization has been set aside at the request of the Office of Accountability and Efficiency.
Okay. Madam Secretary, what's the next?
That was the last of the committee's reports. You would be in line for action on the balance of the committee's reports, unless you had something that you wanted noted for the record, Madam Chair, before you take that vote.
That is correct. I will be recusing myself for AFP item 1 and 2.
Thank you. You would now be in line to accept a motion on the balance of the committee's reports.
Could I have a motion on the balance of the reports? Director O'Halloran?
I move we approve the balance of the reports.
Second? Director Gokul Gandhi?
Second.
On Director O'Halloran's motion to approve the balance of the committee's reports, Director Carr?
Aye.
Director Garcia?
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi?
Aye.
Director Jackson?
Aye.
Director Leonard?
Aye.
Director O'Halloran?
Aye.
Director Seamson?
Aye.
Director Zomber?
Aye.
And President Herndon?
Aye.
That's 9 ayes, the motion passes.
Okay, Madam Secretary, what is the first item set aside?
The first item set aside is from the report of the Committee on Accountability, Finance, and Personnel. Item 2, action on the recommended administrative appointments, promotions, reassignments, and reclassifications, salary increases and decreases, and limited-term employment contracts exceeding 60 days. Your committee recommended approval of the administration's recommendation to adopt the revised appointment. This item has been set aside at the request of the administration. Madam Chair, before discussion begins, because you've recused yourself, it would be prudent for you to pass the gavel.
Thank you. I will pass the gavel to the Vice President, Gokul Gandhi.
Gavel passed. Administration, would you like to comment on this item?
Yes, Madam Chair and members of the board. The item was approved at the AFMP committee meeting on January 16th. However, unforeseen adjustments had to be made to the list. Therefore, we are asking for your approval of the revised appointment list as attached. I have Adra Maddalini here with me, who's the Chief of Human Resources, will walk us through the changes. Adria.
Thank you, Dr. Posley. Vice President Gokul Gandhi, members of the board, Adria Maddalini, Chief Human Resources Officer. After the AFMP committee last week, unfortunately, an individual withdrew their name and their acceptance of a position. So out of transparency, we wanted to make you aware that name will not be moving forward.
Do committee members wish to ask questions? Yep, Director O'Halloran.
Thank you. Just for clarity, so we are considering it, there are 3 attachments. There's 1 revised, and then there's a second revised. So tonight, we are considering administrative appointments, January 2024_2nd, rev.pdf.
Administration.
Vice President Gokul Gandhi, Director O'Halloran, members of the board, that is correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, what is the pleasure of, or what would the board like to do? Yes, Director O'Halloran, thank you.
I move that we approve administration's recommendation as attached in the second revised PDF regarding promotions, appointments, and LTE contracts.
Can I have a second? Director Leonard.
Second.
Madam Secretary.
On the motion by Director O'Halloran to approve the second revised appointment list as presented in the attachments to your report, Director Carr.
Aye.
Director Garcia.
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi.
Aye.
Director Jackson.
Aye.
Director Leonard.
Aye.
Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Director Seamson.
Aye.
And Director Zombor.
Aye.
That's 8 ayes, the motion passes.
Okay, Director O'Halloran, would you like to make any comments?
Yes, to everybody who is newly hired or who has a promotion, I just want to say thank you for bringing your talents to serve. Our students, staff, and community, yes, let's applaud them. Congratulations, and go forth and do great things.
Thank you so much. Congratulations. Madam Secretary, is the next item still under the passed gavel situation?
I don't believe the gavel has been passed back, so you still have the chair.
Okay, I'll pass it back.
Okay, Madam Secretary, what is the next item set aside?
The next item set aside is also from the report of the Committee on Accountability, Finance, and Personnel. That's item 6, action on monthly facilities matters, the FMS award of construction, professional services contract, equipment purchase, and contract modification recommendation. Your committee recommended approval of the construction and professional services contracts, equipment purchases, and contract modification. This item was set aside at the request of the administration.
Thank you. Does administration wish to speak on this item?
Madam Chair and members of the board, this item was approved in AFP committee meeting on January 16th. However, there was 2 contracts that needed to be revised in the hub. We are asking your approval of the revisions to reflect the adjustments. I have Sean Kane here with me, who's the Senior Director of Facilities and Maintenance, as well as Dr. Patrice Cotton, Office of School Administration, and we are prepared to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
What is the pleasure of the board with respect to this item, or did you wish to hear what the specifics were? Okay, go ahead, Mr. Kane.
President Herndon, members of the board, Sean Kane, Senior Director for Facilities and Maintenance Services. There was 2 contracts that had to do the trees removal and pruning services. There was an incorrect contract compliance services assignment, as Dr. Posley indicated, so we reflected the accurate number, what the bid documents that we solicited the quotes for.
Okay. What is the pleasure of the board with respect to this item? Director Simpson.
Well, since Director O'Halloran did not raise her hand, I move approval of the, sure, now I'm going to lose it, the contracts with the revisions as recommended by administration.
May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
On the motion by Director Simpson to approve the recommendation of the administration inclusive of the revised documents as attached. Director Carr.
Aye.
Director Garcia.
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi.
Aye.
Director Jackson.
Aye.
Director Leonard.
Aye.
Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Director Simpson.
Aye.
Director Zomber.
Aye.
And President Herndon.
Aye.
That's 9 ayes. The motion passes.
Madam Secretary, what is the next item set aside?
The next item set aside is from the report of the Committee on Strategic Planning and Budget. Item 6, action on Resolution 2324R-10 by Director Gokul Gandhi on an audit reorganization. Your committee recommended adoption of the resolution. This item was set aside at the request of the Office of Accountability and Efficiency.
Does the OAE wish to speak on this item?
Thank you, Chair Herndon. Matt Chasen, Office of Accountability and Efficiency. The current recommendation from the committee includes approval of the adoption of the resolution. To make sure that we've captured the discussion and the intent of that committee, I would ask that a motion be made to accept the recommendation of the committee and also to adopt the revisions of the policies, procedures, and board rules as attached. And that will bring completeness to the recommendation for the entirety of the item. Have been answering any questions. Thanks.
What is the pleasure of the board with respect to this item? Director O'Halloran.
Thank you, and thank you for your meticulous, attention to detail. Don't want that to get lost in this conversation. So with that, I would recommend, or I would move that the board approve the Office of Accountability and Efficiency's recommendation regarding the resolution as well as the board policies and procedures. Did that adequately? The revised.
It was the recommendation of the committee, technically.
Okay.
But
The
I
recommendation
think, I
of the
believe
committee.
that captures the intent.
Thank you. May I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Director Gokul Gandhi. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Madam Chair, before I call the roll, I just want to point out one little technicality. The board's rules require that adoption of any modification to the board's rules be held one cycle for final approval. So your action tonight will give the go on all of the other policy and procedure revisions. With respect to the modifications to Board Rule 2.06, that will be held one cycle, and it will come back next month as unfinished business. It's just a technicality of the board's rules. On the motion by Director O'Halloran to approve the recommendation of the committee and to adopt the proposed revisions as outlined in the attachments to the item. Director Carr.
Aye.
Director Garcia.
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi.
Aye.
Director Jackson.
Aye.
Director Leonard.
Aye.
Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Director Simpson.
Aye.
Director Zombor.
Aye.
And President Herndon.
Aye.
That's 9 ayes. The motion passes.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, what is the next item set aside?
That was the last item set aside. We are now on to the items of regular business. There are 2 items of regular business. The first is the report of the board's delegates. The first delegate report is that of the delegate to the Milwaukee Library Board.
Would the delegate like to make any remarks?
The report is before you. Please reach out with any questions that you have.
Okay. What is the next report?
The next report is that of the board's delegate to the District Advisory Council, DAC.
Okay. Would the delegate like to make any remarks?
Of course I would.
Of course, Director Leonard.
So that report should be before you, and you can ask me any questions, but I do want to just mention a couple of things as a representative for the parents. They are asking for a much more extensive, detailed conversation regarding the SRO programs, so I have already started putting that in place, so just so you're aware of that. And then also for the public listening audience, with regards to the referendum, I can't say an exact number, but I know approximately 200 people definitely took great interest in this and are more than happy to go and take those buses to Madison to speak their mind regarding Milwaukee Public Schools and the referendum and our revenue limits. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do any other delegates wish to give a report at this time?
Madam Chair, we do have 2 other delegate reports. The next one would be the report of the board's delegate to the Head Start Policy Council.
Okay. Would you like to speak upon that?
Yes, that report is there. However, I do have a clarification. So on the agenda, it says it's the January report, but then when you click on it, it is actually the December report. And I know there were 2 sent. There was a December and a January, so.
I will make that correction to the item.
Okay, thank you. So there will be two reports, one from December, one from January. And, I mean, the only thing I will say is that there was a change made in the time of when the meetings were being held and at the request of parents, and it seems as if there is a greater participation, which is really nice to see. So just to let you know that committee is alive and well, and really some active, involved parents this year. So that is it. If you have any other questions, you can reach out.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, what is the next item of regular business?
We have the report of the board's delegate to WASB.
Okay.
I don't see that uploaded on here, but there is a report out there that has a simple overview of last week's convention. They just had it on Friday, so bear with us. Hopefully for next month, we'll have a little bit more detailed report around that. But I did want to bring one item to the forefront. I know that there was a resolution that, MPS put forth in regards to Act 20 that followed the procedure that, we needed to, considering that we did submit it after the deadline of September 15th. It did go before the floor for consideration. We needed a 67% vote from the floor to be able to consider it for, membership discussion. That vote failed with 60%, so it's still majority, but it did not make it to actually be discussed by the rest of the school districts. So our hope is to continue to submit that for continuous conversations. I know that, just conversations that we continue to have with other delegates around the state, there is a lot of concern around the implications with Act 20, considering that that's supposed to ramp up in August. So there's a lot of unanswered questions at this time in regards to how school systems, what tools are we using? Like, what does that mean? The vendor, is it going to be ready? So my hope is to stay in touch with, the WASB leadership and really see from that perspective, share more information as to what that means for us as a school board that is really taking the lead in advocating with the advocates of WIABE that have been doing a great job just spreading the word as to the implications of this specific act. So yeah, that's my report.
Thank you very much. Yes, Director Zumber.
Thank you, Chair Herndon. And I just want to thank Director Garcia for staying in touch with WASB on this. We did have a lot of board members come up to us after the vote and from around the state and thank us for bringing it forward and asking us to bring it forward again next year. They also said that they're going to be watching what we do really closely for guidance from us because they know we have so many English learners. So just so everyone knows that there were, even though it didn't get heard, people were very appreciative of the work around it and don't want us to stop the fight.
Thank you very much. Madam Secretary, the next item.
The next item is the monthly report of the President of the Milwaukee Board of School Directors.
Thank you. That is attached to the records of this meeting tonight. So you can read it at your convenience. Madam Secretary, is there any unfinished business before the board?
We have no items of unfinished business.
Madam Secretary, are there any items of new business for referral to committee?
Madam President, we have no items of new business.
Madam Secretary, are there any communications for referral to committee?
Madam President, we have no communications.
Madam Secretary, are there any resolutions?
We have no resolutions introduced, Madam Chair.
Madam Secretary, what is the next item on our agenda?
Madam Chair, we're back to the item that was previously deferred. That is the item from the reports of and communications from the Board Clerk, Chief Officer, Office of Board Governance. Item 1, action on a request to retire to closed session to confer with legal counsel relative to litigation in which the board is or is likely to become involved. The recommendation is that the board retire to closed session.
May I please have a motion to retire to closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.85, paren 1, paren G, to confer with legal counsel who is rendering oral or written advice concerning litigation in which the board is or is likely to become involved. Madam Secretary. Director Zumber.
I move the board retire to closed session to confer with legal counsel relative to litigation in which the board is or is likely to become involved.
Could I have a second, please? Director Jackson.
I second it.
Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
On Director Zomber's motion to retire to closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Statutes 19.85, parent 1, parent G. Director Carr.
Aye.
Director Garcia.
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi.
Aye.
Director Jackson.
Aye.
Director Leonard.
Aye.
Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Director Seamson.
Aye.
Director Zombor.
Aye.
And President Herndon.
Aye.
That's 9 ayes. The motion passes.
The board will now retire to a closed session. The board may return to open session to take action on matters discussed in the closed session. Otherwise, the board will adjourn from closed session. Madam Secretary, please note the time.